fastened in a different way. As you can see here, we've got goggles used to fasten it on top of the armor, but that's because you have to consider that in the 16th century the armor was supposed to confront and protect you from gunfire, from so basically bows shot by the Tanegashimate bow, the matchlock type arquebus. But in ancient times what they needed to do is to protect you from arrows. So this is why the sword were a lot bigger, looked much more like a square, so much more similar to actual shields, and they were not fastened to the armor, but they were hung with cords, so it would be a lot easier to remove them if you needed to do so. So the question here is, why choosing to wear two smaller shields rather than holding one in your hand and use your weapon, your primary weapon, with the other hand? Now I've read some forums about this and I noticed that there are, again, misconceptions going around. A lot of people say because shields are clumsy and cumbersome. No, that's not the case. Also, because you have to consider that the term shield is an umbrella term. A scutum, Roman scutum, is a shield, just as much as a buckler is a shield. This is also a shield. A normal type shield is a shield, a heater shield is a shield, a pavese is a shield. So you can see the enormous difference between a pavese or a scutum and a buckler. Now, I will grant you that perhaps the scutum is not the most agile implement for defense, but although it did work very well with the Romans for 1,000 years, I don't think that they would have used something so clumsy as you might think. But a Viking shield, for example, and a buckler can be used very effectively, and they can be very nimble in the hand, so much so that you can use them for both attack and defense. So a somewhat smaller shield to the size of a heater shield or a Viking shield could have easily been used also by the samurai, or something similar to what they were using before, the rise of cavalry, and that would have not meant becoming clumsy at all. So again, why do they not do that? Well, again, other people answered because the Japanese prefer two-handed weapons. For example, yari, naginata, katana, hachi, and even above. Well, it has to do with their weapon usage, but not really to the extent of simply preferring to have a weapon. But it's again because the main weapon of samurai was the bow, and then pole arms. But let's focus on the bow for a second, the yumi. So differently from a European knight, a samurai was also an archer. So differently from swords and spears, a bow is the only weapon that you cannot use if you're holding a shield. Okay? And I think that this is precisely the reason why they don't hold shields in their hands. Because a katana, yes, it's tachi, although it's a secondary weapon, even third weapon, it's not really a main weapon on the battlefield, but yeah, they were using them. You can still use it one-handed if you want to. They don't, but you can technically do it. And that's the same for the spear. Just look at Hellenistic warfare. They used the phalanx, which is basically shield and spear formation, so the Japanese could have also done that. So I think it all has to do with the fact that the bow is the only weapon that you can't use together with the shield, so it was a choice. Either we use a shield and our other weapon is one-handed, or we use a bow. Now if you use a bow, that's obviously what the Japanese chose, even the samurai armor, as I've said, is done in a way that you can use a bow effectively wearing it. Considering the fact that they needed to use the bow, they chose to have the shields here. Now, since they're not carrying a shield, then they start using all the other weapons two-handed. This is my opinion, it's kind of backward. It's not that they prefer to use their weapons two-handed, it's just that since they had to renounce the shield anyways, then they might as well use them two-handed, because honestly, I myself prefer using a spear or a sword two-handed unless I'm using a shield. If I'm using a shield, I can use, a sword and shield combo. But if I only have one-handed sword, even if it's an arming sword like the one I have, I'm still going to grip the pommel and use it two-handed. I myself prefer it for leverage reasons and many others. If it was maybe a cavalry saber, English cavalry saber, then yes, you can use that with one hand, but it's a completely different context. Ultimately, the last point I'd like to bring up is Japanese armor. They use their armor a lot, they trusted their armor a lot to be their main protection. Differently, for example, for the Romans, the main protection for a Roman is a shield, and secondly, the lorica he's wearing. Okay, so here I am in full samurai armor, 16th century Tosei. So, as I was saying, the armor is designed so that you could use both a hand-to-hand weapon, a spear, a sword, but mainly a bow.
Like
so you can
stupid.
see that this is as much mobility I have for the arms, and this is as far as I can go back, okay? And, considering Japanese archery, so again, okay, so already like this, I have total mobility. In the case of Ashigaru, but also some samurai, when they were using a spear, okay, so I'm going to charge you in. What the Japanese did is they would shoot arrows. Now please consider that the draw weight of Japanese bows wasn't as strong as, for example, English longbows. So a Japanese arrow would not be able to penetrate the samurai armor, and even armor from Ashigaru. So what they basically did was they were hoping to get into the gaps. Now there are gaps, as you can see there is a gap here and a gap here because of the range of motion that I have to make sure to have. So what the Japanese did is that when they charged in, during what the Japanese called the armor testing, which is how they called the first round, shall we say, of arrows that they shot, they would charge in like this. This way, I am not offering my weak spots to the enemy, I'm only offering my pauldrons, my helmet, my door. In the very moment of charging, considering there could still be arrows coming towards me, and obviously points of yari, what they did is, although this might sound strange, the best area and strongest part of their armor is here. So the way they charged in was like this. So they wouldn't really look, they would just look down and hope for the best, although we have to consider that this is something that you would do at the very last moment. So charging in like this. This shouldn't surprise us though, because it's something that we did similar. It was something very similar we did in Chelsea, for example, medieval knights wearing the frogman helmet, considering that the strongest part of the frogman helmet is this part here, because it's one solid plate that hangs because it was developed specifically for Jackson. We didn't have injury methods at any time. What they did to maximize protection, knights, just before impact, they would do this movement like this and go back with their head, so that even if there were little fragments of lance flying around, they wouldn't be able to enter inside your visor through the actual eye slits. So this is what they would do just before impact. Similar technique, I would say. It's just a Japanese would look down. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. Before finishing the video, there is one YouTuber that I would like to mention, and his name is Cata the Viking. He has recently mentioned me, and even in one of his latest videos, and he also used a few clips from one of my videos where I showed some combat moves from The Witcher. I always appreciate that. I really appreciate when other YouTubers mention me, or even if they use little clips from my videos. I always return the favour as much as I can. So this is what I'm doing here. He has made this video about The Witcher. You can find the link in the description. So if you're interested in his examination of The Witcher style of fighting, which I myself will make a video like this in the future. But if you're interested and you want to see how he used my clip and how he talks about this, please go check him out. Okay then, thank you very much for watching, and remember, the method one has spread his wings.
I must heal!
Number one. What a surprise! I didn't know you were here waiting for me. That is great. In fact, how did you manage to get in my home? I have just come back from the gym, because mind you, I actually go to the gym 5 times a week, and then I have a full-time job, and I upload data. How the heck I managed to do that, I have no idea. I don't think there is an actual scientific explanation. It belongs to the realm of mysticism. But, as you could find out from the title of this video, today we're going to talk about the Kanabo, very interesting anti-armor weapon belonging to feudal Japan. As I said, the Kanabo was mostly an anti-armor weapon. We have a lot of possible versions, and as a matter of fact, we've got quite a few possible names. Kanabo is one, Kanasaibo is another one, Konsaibo, Tetsubo. What basically is, it's a blunt weapon that samurai used during, as I said, feudal Japan, most likely invented during the period of North and South courts. It has a similar shape to that of a baseball bat, but the dimensions vary enormously, from a one-handed weapon to a two-handed weapon as long as a man. It could be made entirely of hard wood, it could be made entirely of iron, or simply have the top ends sheathed iron. Normally, Kanabo have iron spikes or knots, but if neither spikes nor knots are present, then it would be more appropriate to talk about a kanemuchi or a aribo. The shape also varies. Some are straight all the way, while others have a heavier, larger top, tapering towards the handle, becoming more slender. Side note! Holy mother of Dovakin! Now this side note is a little bit of a mini rant, because honestly it's beyond me how people in the comments section, like I love the fact that you comment, of course, because it's a great thing, but sometimes, it puzzles me, and it's really, really bizarre how it doesn't matter what I talk about. I might be talking about the imperial times of Rome, I might talk about medieval European knights, and I might talk about monastic life, I might talk about ancient Japanese mythology. It doesn't matter. People still will talk about my hair and my beard. You've got split ends. No, he doesn't have split ends. Yes, he does. No, he doesn't. He never brushes his hair. Yes, he said he brushes his hair every day. No, he doesn't. Yes, he does. His hair is disgusting and should cut it. No, he shouldn't. His hair is fantastic.
That's way more.
Hello number one, welcome back to my channel. This is the Methodist. Today we will explore and study the Roman military. Roman military tactics and strategies changed constantly, continuously evolving to suit the needs of the ever-growing Eternal, from a small hegemony-seeking tribal host to the massive operations of a world empire. There were, however, constant elements to Roman warfare, a strong sense of discipline, and the typical ruthless persistence towards victory. From early use of phalanx-type elements, divided into 5 different classes, the Republican armies with 3 lines of soldiers, Ascati, Princeps, Priari, Rorari, Akensi, to the Marian reforms, where military forces were based on heavy citizen infantry, which will eventually form the typical Imperial Legion. Although the numbers will change depending on whether we're talking about Republican time or Imperial time, a Roman soldier had to typically carry a weight of 27 kilos, meaning 60 pounds on him. This equipment will be made of armor, weapons, scutum, which would normally be carried inside a hide cover for waterproof and protection, pila, 15 days of ration, and tools for digging. These tools would have been used to create the castra, fortified base camp. Particularly after Marian reforms, they would be carrying the heavy pack on a stick, which will be carried on the left shoulder. They would carry 5 days worth of wheat or pulses, a flask of oil, a kit consisting of dish, cup, and utensils. And depending on where the unit or the legion were to be redeployed, they would also be carrying socks, and later on, breeches. The entrenchment equipment consisted of a wicker basket for moving earth, a spade, a pickaxe, and 2 wooden stakes for carrying palisade. Each sentry would be then divided into groups made of 8 soldiers, and sometimes these groups or some of these groups would have a mule. These mules will be carrying supplies, spare weapons, cooking pots, milk for grinding grain, water skins, and tents. Normally one sentry would have 10 mules. Some sentries would also have the support of wagons, and amongst other things, in these wagons you would have the possession of the same unit. There was also an artillery detachment, which was made of 30 people, 10 stone throwing a dagger, and 20 bolts shooting ballistic. Also, each sentry would have its own scorpion bolt thrower. Bolts will be used against humans, stones will be used against buildings. Training. Now, we do have a lot of information thanks to Roman writers who tell us a lot about the training of the soldiers, which was of course essential to the efficacy of the legions deployed in combat. So now we will talk about this training and some of the things that, for example, we read in Vegetius, which I think you by now will have understood that he's one of my favorite Roman writers. We will then talk briefly about Roman logistics, and then we will end the video with some interesting curiosities about some tactics which involve a whistle, whether they would be real or not, and that we sometimes see in films and movies.
That wasn't too short, but oh.
Now, there are a lot of elements in training. Of course, the soldiers will be trained how to respond and understand and obey commands and shouts of their superiors during combat. But there were 2 main elements to the training of a legionary. The first one would be marching, and the second one would be combat. Now, please notice that even though combat was essential, so much so that actual combat trainers would receive double rations, we do have to understand that marching was the basis. So a soldier wasn't allowed to even touch a weapon, even wooden weapons for training. He wouldn't enter combat training if we hadn't first mastered marching. The reason for that is quite clear. If soldiers are not prepared to march, both physically and mentally, the legion couldn't be deployed properly. And understanding marching also meant understanding formation, tight formation.